Thank you, Valdek. It's a pleasure for me to address you on behalf of the Council of Europe, the Secretary General, Mr. Torbjörn Jagland. Representatives of national and local authorities and institutions, language professionals who are with us, and ladies and gentlemen, herzlich willkommen. And I would like to add small linguistic diversity to this conference by welcoming you also in my own language, which is the smallest, probably one of the smallest in Europe, and say, verið hjartanlega velkomin. And this was Icelandic. Not so different from German. Not so different from German. So, it is a great pleasure for me to be with you here in Graz for the conference on empowering language professionals. I remember when I came first to this very beautiful city, sorry that the mayor has left, 20 years ago. This was on my way to Maribor in Slovenia. And there I was attending, as a young administrator of the Council of Europe, one of the first Council of Europe conferences on minority issues in the new Europe that was then about to be reunited, 1992, I think. And the subject of that particular conference was the respect of cultural and linguistic diversity in Europe and the need for cooperation in the greater Europe in this field. This respect and this cooperation have always been promoted by the Council of Europe and its member states, and the European Centre for Modern Languages is a living proof of this policy. May I thank very warmly all the members of the partial agreement who have made this dream of a place entirely devoted to the promotion of languages come true, and of course my very special thanks to the Austrian authorities for their strong support to the ECML. In 1954, a cultural convention was signed in Paris, a European Cultural Convention. And this convention emphasized very much the importance of language education. Those who drafted the convention, they understood and they knew quite well that understanding and speaking one other's language is a fundamental prerequisite for being able to live together in a Europe without dividing lines. Language use plays an essential role in all forms of life, and specifically, of course, in all forms of education. Language use involves much more than just command of linguistic means of communication. It is a tool for acquiring and transferring knowledge. It is perhaps the most important aspect of the development of human beings. Sometimes we hear that the most difficult thing for a child, what they learn in their life, is to learn their mother tongue. It is the most difficult thing that a child learns. So it is something extremely important. It helps us to make sense and understand reality, and it is also a vehicle for creativity. May I just recall briefly what are the main objectives of education as defined by the Council of Europe? First, of course, preparing for the labour market. Then, preparing for active citizenship in a democratic society. Personal development and acquisition and consolidation of a large knowledge base. Language education is, of course, a fundamental element of all these objectives. The efficient and effective use of more than one language is necessary for and one of the results of successful quality education. Quality education needs to acknowledge and include the learner's own language, including, of course, if they are minority or migrant languages, as they are important features in their successful integration into the world of learning. You know that over the last decades, the migration trends in Europe have resulted in increasingly diverse European societies from a linguistic and cultural point of view. At the Council of Europe, we are convinced that this linguistic and cultural diversity should be seen as an asset and as a benefit to society. The Council of Europe will continue to promote learning and use of languages not only as a full part of the right to quality education, but an important asset in a modern knowledge-based society, and at the same time a means to support intercultural dialogue, social cohesion and democratic citizenship. It has been mentioned by some of the speakers already and by Teresa, and I thank her for reminding us of these important instruments. The Council of Europe has prepared very important instruments like the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the European Language Portfolio, many other instruments like the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages, and most recently the recommendation on the use of Council of Europe's Common European Framework and the promotion of plurilingualism. More recently, there is a report of a group of eminent persons that has been published by the Council of Europe, and it's called Combining Diversity and Freedom in the 21st Century, and it emphasizes very strongly the importance of language education. Increasingly, work is being done together with the European Commission on language learning, and this is extremely important. The Council of Europe language education policy has mainly been developed in Strasbourg, in the Language Policy Division of the Directorate of Education and Languages. However, some 20 years ago, about the time I was traveling to Maribor, it became more and more clear that European language education professionals needed to be more closely associated with this work to a much larger extent than before. And they needed a space where they could come together to compare ideas and experience. This is how the idea of a partial agreement came about. This center, the Graz Center for Modern Languages, which is the organizers of conference today, has been serving the community of language education professionals in its 34 member states for over 15 years now. Again, allow me to mention a little bit of history. The center was set up following an initiative of 8 Council of Europe member states: Austria, France, Greece, Liechtenstein, Malta, the Netherlands, Slovenia and Switzerland in 1994. And the objective was to provide this practical response to the need clearly expressed that teachers, language professionals needed to come together and work on these issues together. And this became even more important after the accession of the many new member states of Central and Eastern Europe to the Council of Europe. And there was a rapid growth in the partial agreement, and now it is currently 34 member states. In the last 16 years, the ECML has established itself as an important, high quality and effective space for international cooperation. It reaches out beyond Europe by developing a good working relationship with Canada, initiating cooperation with Japan and the Arab countries. Let me mention very briefly some of the achievements of the Centre. Its previous programme of activities, such as the Language for Social Cohesion Programme 2004-2007, comprised over 50 projects, directly involved over 6,000 language professionals in Europe. Empowering language professionals is the overarching objective of the current program of the Centre. And this current program will be exposed and discussed during this conference. We have 23 international project teams that have been established by the Centre and have now concluded their work. These projects are mostly on developing practical approaches and tools for language education. They support the application of the language policy instruments developed by the Council of Europe's Language Policy Division and also the recommendations of the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages, which I mentioned before, and which is a unique instrument in the world, not only in Europe, but in the whole world, for the preservation of Europe's linguistic heritage. The programs of the Centre have offered an impressive range of activities supporting the language professionals in their daily work and with coping with current challenges. I sincerely hope that this program has helped them enhancing their skills and making their professional environment better. This conference will also mark the beginning of the fourth medium-term program of activities for the next years until 2015 of the ECML. And this new program aims to facilitate European cooperation in implementing the new concept of inclusive, plurilingual and intercultural education developed by the Council of Europe. In the crucial stage of testing, awareness raising, adapting and implementing this educational policy in practice, the ECML can act as a laboratory for targeted policy application and innovative practice. And we should also mention that the cooperation initiated in 2010 with the major international non-governmental organizations, the main stakeholders in the areas of language education and research, will be an important dimension of this work. This work this new program comes out of a very thorough consultation process with the partners and stakeholders which has been carried out through the last months. Ladies and gentlemen, the Council of Europe is at the moment going through a deep reform concerning both its activities and its structures. The discussions that are related to this reform have highlighted the crucial role and contribution of specialized partial agreements such as the ECML. Such partial agreements can focus on issues of specific interest and thus quickly acquire experience and expertise and build networks of professionals in the field. And this is precisely what has happened here in Graz. The clear added value of the Centre consists primarily in its role as an initiator and coordinator of European and international cooperation. The activities coordinated by the Centre are carried out by European and international experts willing to share their experience. They also, and this is not less important, they explore new concepts, innovative approaches. The work of this Centre is supported by an impressive network of professionals acting as national contact points and national nominating authorities in the ECL member states. Many are present here today. I wish to thank them very sincerely for their contribution as disseminators and multipliers of ideas, as initiators of approaches and tools developed by the Centre. They bring their ideas and experiences to the Centre and they take home with them what they learn from their colleagues from other countries and use in their own national context. The efficient functioning of the Centre is supported, as you know, by the considerable engagement of the Austrian authorities. You have heard about this now in this opening ceremony. there is significant financial support provided jointly by the federal authorities, the authorities of the province of Styria and the city of Graz. This example of excellent national and intergovernmental cooperation is greatly appreciated by the Council of Europe and by all those who come to meet and work in the Centre. It is a great example of how we can make the dream of a peaceful and united Europe come true. What happens here must be disseminated as widely as possible, and we who are gathering here today, we are all responsible for this task. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming to my conclusion, but before I do, I just want to remind us that the current economic and budgetary crisis in Europe is putting significant pressure on many member states of the Council of Europe. Some of them now examine very carefully their level of contribution to the cost of international cooperation from the scarce national resources. Their efforts to sustain this cooperation are therefore to be valued today more than ever. I would argue that the most efficient way to deal with the crisis in the contemporary globalized world and market economy is precisely through solidarity and cooperation on the international and intergovernmental level. It is not good to close oneself into national boundaries and not to cooperate with others. Of course, this means greater responsibility for people like us, for me, Waldek, for Teresa and Susanna and others, because the international institutions coordinating such cooperation, such as the ECML, we have to be much stronger in our work than before, because there are more expectations. There is a need to genuinely account for this considerable investment to sustain the activities of international organizations, including the Centre. And we need to provide the evidence of the added value of this work and to report on the result. We will certainly do our best to do so. I would like to conclude by congratulating and thanking the Centre staff for their hard work, and thanking once again all those who have contributed to the success of the Centre. The many European experts involved in the Centre's project activities, the representatives of the ECML member states which oversee, support and disseminate the results of the Centre's work, the members of the ECML governing board, members of the network of national contact points, national nominating authorities, and the Committee of Ministers Deputies of the Council of Europe. May I thank you all for your outstanding contribution. And finally, my very special thanks go again to the Austrian authorities for their unfailing commitment and generous support, to the Austrian Ministry for Education, Arts and Culture, the Austrian Ministry for Science and Research, the authorities of the province of Styria and the city of Graz, and last but not least, the Austrian ECML Association, through which the support is managed. I wish the Centre well for its future work. I wish it to grow and develop for the benefit of language professionals of Europe, and I wish you, participants in this conference, interesting and fruitful discussion. Vielen Dank und viel Spaß mit der Konferenz.